I have got my flavor here, so I appreciate all your help. I've got a movie to write.
You're leaving? You don't want to get to the bottom of this?
Not especially.
Well, sometimes truth can be stranger than fiction.
Well, fiction is quicker than truth and cheaper. You want my advice? You're both crazy.
Why do you say that?
Well, you're crazy for believing what you believe, and you're crazy for not believing what he believes. I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
I miss him already.
Hello and welcome to Most Unwanted, an X-Files podcast. I'm your host, Chex. I'm joined by Luke to talk about X-Files episodes. How you doing, Luke?
I'm not too bad. I need to caveat right at the beginning. If I sound weird or stuffed up, it's just because I've got fighting off a bit of illness, but I'm still here. I'm still going. We're still going to cover this zany episode.
We are. I mean, I think we're. It's good that we've actually made it because where we're from, sort of Wolverhampton, Birmingham area in the Midlands. I'm going to put a rough estimate about 90% of the population are just stricken down with illness.
Yeah, it's rampant at the moment. Just everybody I know is ill or knows somebody is ill or has been ill.
Yeah, I walked into the office the other day and it was like a ghost town. It's insane. I think it's the first proper winter since the COVID thing, and like I think everyone's immune systems are down, and there's a bit of everything mixed in. It's just like a perfect storm of everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You can tell it's bad. I work from home. I don't see anybody in the day, and I've still got it. So. Yeah, just can't escape it at the moment.
And came at the perfect time as well, because December, notoriously quiet month.
Yeah. I've got nothing to do at the moment. Yeah, it's not helpful. I'll be completely honest.
Have you been up to much? I know I'm pretty sure you are the same as me, and basically just days are spent watching the World Cup at the moment.
Pretty much, yeah. It's either watching the World Cup, watching highlights because I've missed a game of the World Cup, or it's preparing for Christmas stuff at the moment. Like, it's full steam ahead. It's just, I mean, we said it before, silly idea, isn't it? Having World Cup at Christmas or at the end of the year. And I mean, for many reasons alone, this World Cup's a bad idea. But personally, I think it's really screwing me over at the moment.
I didn't realise how badly it was going to mess up my schedule, I'm not going to lie. Yeah. There is not a day that goes by where I'm not busy in one sense or the other, which is not a nice feeling. I'd like to just chill out and relax. I don't know whether I'm going to get that opportunity to, but we shall see. Shall we get on to this episode? I feel like that we could go a little bit long today, because this is a full episode of content to talk about. So today we'll be looking at Season 7, Episode 19 of The X-Files. I believe there's 22 episodes in this season, is that right?
Yeah, this series 22. And I think this is probably the last 22 series, I think. I think they start dropping down a bit from here. Maybe.
If I remember correctly, next season has 21, and then it starts going like really low.
Yeah.
Could be wrong on that. It might be another 2 seasons of like 20 episodes-ish. But yeah, I know we're fast approaching the end of this one. I reckon we've probably got one more Monster of the Week and then 2 mythology, perhaps. Or I don't know, they sometimes split the mythology over the season break, don't they?
Yeah, it depends sometimes. Like sometimes you can get 2 at the end, or 1 and then 2 the next. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, we're fast approaching the end, as you said.
So this particular episode, Hollywood AD, it's titled, directed and written by our good friend David Duchovny. Originally aired April 30th, 2000. So, right off the bat, I think we get the sense that this is going to be unlike a normal episode.
Yes.
So what we see Mulder under fire in a graveyard. There are snipers aiming at him. He's hiding behind a tombstone. We see that the people shooting the snipers are zombies.
Yes, yeah.
So the zombie sniper man, all being ordered to shoot at Mulder by a guy who is holding Scully hostage.
Yes.
Now that's pretty much it, I think, isn't it? I'm not missing anything there.
I mean, there's some lines later on with this one that really that kind of skewer the X-Files as a whole. We're jumping ahead here, but this guy is referred to as the cigarette smoking priest. To which they say, "Why would you just refer to a character as just cigarette smoking priest like that? Where's the context?" And it's like, you can't, like, they're taking all the criticism there.
Yeah, obviously, a little tongue in cheek. This entire intro segment isn't the Mulder and Scully as we know. It is Mulder and Scully, yes, the characters, but being played by Gary Shandling and I don't know how to say the actress's name. Tia Leone, is it?
I think Tia Leone. Yeah,
I want to say that.
Little trivia note. Well, did you catch the trivia note about Tia Leone?
I didn't. No, I don't go into the episodes. I basically wait for your production notes.
So yeah, a bit of early production notes. Tia Leone's David Duchovny's at the time wife.
Wait, so his wife played a version of Scully?
Yeah.
That's good. That is good.
There's a lot in this episode. The production notes, I expect, are going to take a while.
Oh God. So yeah, it's an acted scene. It's very dramatic. It's very overacted. Gary Shandling, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Gary Shandling, I've got to be honest, through interviews that I've seen of him. I don't know that much about him. He just seems like a rude person whenever I've seen him in an interview.
Only thing I know about Gary Shandling, well, I don't even know anything about him. I know there's the Gary Shandling show, and I know the theme tune to it is really fucking stupid.
Okay.
It's like Gary paid me to make this song. That's literally what it is. If you fancy, like, yeah, just catch up on that. Just go Gary Shandling intro theme. It's just, I don't know. It's just like something that shouldn't be on TV. You know what I mean?
So my only experience with him tends to be, and again, you don't have full context, so I'm not going to judge him outright. But it just tends to be him coming across as if he's better than all the other people that he's in the business with. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Thinking he knows better. It might be a character, and I just don't get it because I haven't got the context behind it. I don't know. But he just always come across as rude to me, so I've never really looked into him.
Maybe he's like method acting just as himself.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of comedians out there that do that I find funny. Like Stuart Lee is very similar, where he shows disdain for the arts comedy, but it's an act, and I know it's an act, so I'm in on the joke. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe it's something like that. I don't know. But he does a great job as Mulder here. As I say, it's all very overacted. It reminded me, this is going to be a niche pull. It reminded me of, do you remember the scene? And I believe it's in Austin Powers Goldmember, where they've got all the other, like, they've got actors like Danny DeVito playing Mini-Me and stuff like that. And there's this particular scene where the priest is smoking, and it's like comically smoking, like puffs of smoke coming from his mouth. And I was just like, it's so stupid.
Yeah.
They end up, big monologue from the bad guy. Mulder does like an Indiana Jones, like throws this this bowl of Lazarus in the air, saves Scully. They fall heroically into a coffin, and then there's a huge makeout scene at the end.
There's even a bit of like Carry On style innuendo as well, where they start talking about his torch in his pocket or something like that.
Well, during like the torch and the torch in your pocket scene, we cut to the theater, and we can see the cast of this film, including Gary Shandling, including Tia Leone, but also Mulder and Scully themselves, who both seem mortified by their portrayal in this film. In stark contrast, as they look over to Skinner, who seems to be loving it. He's eating his popcorn, and he finds this very entertaining.
I mean, it's not going to be a controversial take from us two specifically. The Skin Man is.
I'm
is
so
on...
glad he's the Skin Man from now on. For
yeah,
us.
oh yeah. I used to call him Big Skin, but I feel like the Skin Man is pretty much on par. I feel like me and this guy Federman are kind of on the level. But yeah. He stole the show in the very limited pieces that he's in.
Yeah,
there's a cutaway later, which I'm sure you'll talk about.
Yes, I certainly will. And so yeah, that's the intro. What did you think of this? First of all, I'll just give you a quick rundown of my thoughts. I knew it wasn't going to be a normal episode. It actually was weirder than I thought. The episode, I thought it's very standalone in its nature. It doesn't feel like an X-Files episode at all. Not a bad thing, but it just feels very removed from X-Files. And I'm kind of glad, because this first intro, I was worried that oh, you're really breaking the universe here. Like, what? They're literally at a Mulder and Scully film. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't make much sense, but I kind of feel like they go so surreal with it that it kind of works anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot with this episode, where especially by the ending as well. Like there's a lot that sort of I don't know what to infer from it, but other than it's this zany kind of like cartoonish kind of story with them, really. Like, it wouldn't. Do you know how big TV shows get like the animated series and stuff like that, and they go a bit like wilder with that? This is like when I was watching this, I was like, if they ever did like the X-Files, the animated series, this would be like a great episode for that, because it is so weird. Like the tone of it would fit more with like a cartoon, if you know what I mean. Not to that sounds like I'm insulting the episode, but I think with the tone of it, it fits that style more, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
In the best way possible. I'm trying to.
It's self-contained. And it makes it very clear it's self-contained. And I don't think it has any repercussions on anything else.
Not really, no.
We cut to, you might have to forgive me, I think it's 16 months earlier.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, after watching this, I was like, well, what is this case that they've been on? Like, what happened during this case? And I was glad to see the 16 months earlier. So I was like, oh, okay, so we are going to see this case.
So 16 months earlier, Skinner is giving in the office with Mulder and Scully, and he's talking through a case about a bomb that's gone off, in basically an old church, catacombs of O'Fallon's church, he says. But all the while, he keeps getting interrupted by a man that's sitting in the background, making remarks, just like constantly. He's got a dictator. Is it dictape? Is that what you call it?
Dictaphone, in it.
Dictaphone, sorry, yeah, that's right. And he's like basically repeating like little key phrases and things that like snippets that he likes to hear of, until Mulder asks who it is, and we find out that it's Wayne Federman.
Federman, yeah. Which I didn't realize this is just an actual person. Like I thought. I mean, he's actually playing a fictionalized version, but the actual actor's name is Wayne Federman as well.
Oh, okay.
So I think he's like a comedian, like he's one of these, like, he's a fairly famous American comedian. You know what I mean? Like, he's never really broken over here. Like, I've definitely never heard of him. But like, he's got credits in loads of stuff, like if you see on Wikipedia.
It's actually got quite a bit of star power, this episode, because I don't know whether you noticed. I saw I can't remember whether it was in the beginning or the end, but one of the people sitting in the cinema was Minnie Driver.
Yeah.
Right.
There's
and I was like, I was like, well, I couldn't understand that, because I was like, well, why have you got Minnie Driver there but not used? And I think it was just like a little cameo. But yeah, there's a few big stars, including, like, obviously you got Gary Shandling as well.
Yeah. Even the Cardinal, like, he's that we see later on, he's in quite a lot of films. Like, I mean, famously known from Bean, but he's in.
I want to have a quick look at the Cardinal's name. I
can't remember the actor's name.
Who plays him, at least.
Yeah, he's in a lot of stuff though. Like, his credits list is huge.
Harris Yulin, is that right?
That sounds about right. I didn't write his name down. I know he's in Bean. He's in Ozark as well, I think, isn't he, or something like that?
Apparently he is. Yeah, I don't remember. He's in. So he's in. Oh God, yeah. I mean, it's huge. He's in Training Day, Frasier, Ghostbusters 2, Scarface. So yeah, been in a lot of stuff. I did recognize him. I just didn't know what I recognized him from.
And obviously Bean the hit there.
With this explanation of who he is, did make me laugh that Skinner was just helping out a buddy, like an old college friend, for no reason at all. And it was like, this is your top priority, to help this man get the experience he needs for his FBI thriller movie.
This series, it seems to be that Skinner's trying to open up the FBI to like the world, like, because we've had an episode before as well where he's like instructed them to be helpful towards the media and stuff, and I was like, I wondered at this, I was like, is there was there something going on at the time where the FBI were like embroiled in like a scandal or something like that, and do you know, in real world, and if that's kind of like, because they do occasionally take like hints from the real world, mainly like references that Mulder makes. But like, I wonder if if something was happening at the time that sort of made them go, oh, we have to be more transparent as the FBI, and like this is kind of like a meta story, if you know what I mean.
Certainly Skinner's philosophy at the moment, because he's just happy to let anybody in, anybody at all, doesn't matter what the case is. But this is an important case, and I mean, the whole reason why he's giving it to Mulder, it should be going to as he admits himself, it should basically be going to a terrorism unit, because it is a bomb attack. There's no casualties as of yet, but Wayne Federman particularly wants to follow Mulder because he's heard that he's exactly the right type of character that he wants to play in his movie. So Mulder's on the case, so that's the way it works. We don't need the experts on this case. What we need is the person who's most entertaining for this case.
Pretty much, yeah. I love this bit as well, that it was like Mulder and Scully are kind of like, who is this guy and why are we letting him in? And it just, everything that they said, and throughout the rest of the episode, until eventually the tide turns and Mulder starts to like the guy, it feels like it's them basically slacking off every executive involved in the X-Files and the production of it, because he's constantly having maybe she could be a bit more like this, or, you know, he's always giving these like notes to change their characters. Yeah, if they got them into basically taking the mick out of the people who are handing these notes down, I guess, from executives.
I think you're spot on. I think this episode's very, very meta. I really do. Yeah. Because he, like you said, he does play the everyman, just handing notes of like how the play should go, and sometimes it's not so realistic, and sometimes it is. But it definitely feels like he's like a shoo-in for the audience. Like, even as he follows, so he goes to this case with them and he's in the back seat, he's basically becoming the audience member, where Mulder and Scully will be walking and doing things, and he will comment on interesting things that they do, and he becomes a de facto us watching it.
Basically, I wrote down, it's like having Twitter watch along the
yeah.
It's like this constant running commentary of like, oh, why is he doing stuff like this? And it's like, literally, it's that kind of asinine commentary that you get on, like, you know, YouTube comments and stuff like that, where it's just like, why would anyone say this? It's that kind of stream of conscious, like,
very much so. Yeah. Also, just what I want to point out, because I didn't think it was important to the time, but it definitely is. Skinner asks Scully to stay behind for some paperwork, which isn't important at all, but Federman thinks it's very important.
Yeah. He's got his own narrative in his head.
I mean, you know what? Jumping into the end of the episode, I love the fact that Federman's looking out for his bro. He portrays Skinner in the best light.
Especially with who he casts as him.
Yeah. Skinner's the hero of this story. So, yeah. They go to the church. They meet O'Fallon, who is the... I think it's Cardinal, this one is. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I always get very mixed up as to like what sort of station religious people are in the church. But yeah, so they go to see O'Fallon, and it's mentioned in passing that he is of such high stature that he's been talked about as the American Pope, possibly.
Basically.
And they speak to him, and basically the Cardinal, he's happy to show them around. He shows them the catacombs where the bomb went off. He says there's not that much down there. It's like relics and bones, and just basically he can't imagine why anyone would set a bomb off down there. He doesn't know what happened.
Yeah.
But when they go down there, they find a phone goes off, and they find the remains of a human, and the phone itself says, what was the name now? Mickey Hoffman.
That's it. Yeah.
And they find the remains of this body in the rubble where the bomb went off.
Yeah. It's. I mean, it's an interesting setup because the describing this part of the episode is the least interesting part.
Well, this is the thing. It's a weird episode to talk about because this episode, it's like 2 episodes in one.
Yeah.
And this episode, like the first half of this episode, is so strange because it's kind of half a story. It doesn't really work.
No.
They
and
give
especially by the end as well. It kind of just feels like they just went, scrap that.
Yeah, there's no real resolution to it. It doesn't make a lot of sense. They kind of give a half-assed explanation for it. And even like some of the key elements in it, it doesn't really go into like what happened. Like it's not like that. It was just like a dud case, and they make it clear it was a dud case, because there are things in the episode where it's like, oh no, this could be real, but we're just not going to go into it.
Yeah.
So it's really strange to talk about because it's hard to sort of like decipher what's going on here, really.
Yeah, and especially with some of the things that we see, like some of the shots that they spent a lot of time on.
Just the Lazarus Bowl.
Yeah, with the Lazarus Bowl. There's a bit in a second as well where they're in the tomb and the bones. I mean, we'll get to that. I was like, what is going on here? And that never gets well, it kind of is, but
I think it just sort of. I think the way this episode ends kind of just gives it a free pass because it's so surreal in nature anyway that it kind of doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, we'll quickly get through this sort of this actual case so that we can talk about the meat and bones of what the episode's actually about.
Mm-hmm.
So they search this Micah Hoffman's apartment, or it's not really an apartment, it's like a sort of workspace.
Yeah, it's like a studio, isn't it?
Yeah, and they find a lot of counterfeiting tools. They find bombs. They find so immediately they think, well, this must be the guy that's blew the place up.
Yeah, we find as well that Mulder mentions that he's quite notorious as a conspiracy theorist. I think Mulder used to look up to him at least, but yeah, obviously he's changed tact a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And they've also found, as well as all those sort of counterfeiting tools, they found basically gospels and pages of books and that have been forged, but to such a great extent that it's almost unless you saw it with all the tools there, you wouldn't know that it was fake. You wouldn't know that it was forged.
Yeah.
And some of these are the Gospels of Mary Magdalene. And basically it goes, they start to talk about the story through Scully's limited language skills. What was the language that it's?
I
can't remember what they call it.
It's like an ancient dead language that no one uses anymore.
Well, apparently Jesus used to speak
Aramaic.
Aramaic, yes.
Yeah.
As
soon as you said A,
yeah, I was like, It was in Aramaic, and Scully can sort of read it, and it basically it's all to do with Jesus and Lazarus, and apparently giving Lazarus life. Again, they don't really go into it in much detail. I did a little bit of research on Lazarus just because I was interested in it, but I don't think we really need to go into it because it honestly doesn't really relate that much, apart from the fact that Jesus brought someone back to life, and then apparently urban myth or like legend says that the tool of this Lazarus bowl can bring someone else back to life.
Yeah.
It doesn't really make a difference. This whole
No.
idea was forged from this guy, and that's what it looks like. And so we know that he probably was the one who used the bombs, but obviously he's got these fakes, and so they wonder whether O'Fallon's got something to do with it because of the forgeries that he was making.
Yeah. Again, it's the loosest possible way to like tie it into an X-File. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It kind of feels like David Duchovny had a story he wanted to tell, regardless of the fact that they were in the X-Files. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, it's finding a way to do that. But
also, Mulder does return back to the catacombs, and he finds bits of this gospel in the catacombs as well. So he knows that O'Fallon was aware of this forgery. And this is where, like you said, Fetterman takes a call. He sort of retreats back to a separate room, and he sees animated skulls and bones, and very much like a Nightmare Before Christmas style.
I wrote the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So
And it's like
Nightmare Before
they're
Christmas
kind
is
of
weird.
dancing around a little bit.
Yeah, this was really strange. This is where the episode I was like, what is happening in this episode?
It becomes very surreal at this point.
Yeah, there's a few scenes like that in this where it's just a little bit weird for X-Files. It's too weird for the X-Files. Again, it didn't sour me on the episode, but at the time watching, I was like, what is going on?
So as they're recounting this to Scully, who basically tells Fetterman that it was just, your mind playing tricks on you, it wasn't anything serious. And Fetterman doesn't seem that bothered. He's just happy. He's got the story that he wants. He doesn't want to see it through because, as he says, he can tell his story faster and cheaper.
Basically, yeah.
So he's back off to LA, and he knows exactly what he's going to do. And as he leaves Mulder and Scully with this sort of half a case to work with, and Scully sort of ponders on the idea that, well, the whole story does remind her of the story of the Lazarus Bowl, like I said, which is someone was close by when this happened, when Jesus brought Lazarus back to life, and she was doing pottery at the time, and it's scripted on it like a record almost was the words that Jesus said, and that's allegedly got the power to bring people back to life.
Yeah, it's sort of
or bring the dead back up from the grave type thing.
Yeah. I like Fetterman had a quote here as well that basically sums up the show in a sentence. And he basically says, you're both crazy. You're crazy for believing what you believe, and you're crazy for not believing him. And it's like, that is literally this show, like just in a nutshell.
Again, very, very much the everyman of this episode.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
We get a surprise cameo again from our good friend Chuck, who
always got some zingers, and Chuck.
He just seems happy to be there, and he loves his job. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But Chuck examines this bowl, this sort of like pieces of the bowl, for example, and he uses something he calls sonic analysis, which basically he can hear even things that you don't pick up on normal day life because it's constant and it's in the background. This amplifies it so you can hear what's like the world around him.
Yeah.
And one of the things he gets from this pot is, well, he gets something which is a start. He gets something that would suggest it has been printed on like a record.
Yeah.
On one side, it's I Am the Walrus by the Beatles.
Yep.
Including some Paul is Dead. Just popular conspiracy theories there, which have nothing to do with anything.
Yeah. This is where you can kind of see it's linking it back to that guy, the conspiracy theory guy, and it's like, oh, okay, like this is where it's all coming from there.
Yeah, exactly. On the other side, there is what Scully expected to see, which is the Aramaic writing of Lazarus. Scully still seems to be like alarmed by this, and I just thought to myself, well, Like, the Beatles weren't around when Jesus was there. Like, if it's on the same side, if it's on the same piece of clay, I think we can safely say this is fake.
Yeah. So, somebody set this up. Yeah, as far as I know, the Beatles didn't exist back then. Yeah,
Well, you never know. Yeah, maybe that conspiracy theory goes deeper than we think.
Well, yeah, that would be a hell of a conspiracy. That the music of the Beatles, they just ripped off Bible music. They know what a walrus was, and that was the good thing as well, because they didn't have an Aramaic word for walrus. So what would they call it now? It was like hairy tusked something,
sea monster type thing. Yeah. Again, I'll quickly get through this so we can talk about the second part of this episode. Mulder goes back to O'Fallon. Basically, he says that he believed these gospels to be real, and he was so ashamed of the word of Jesus, that it wasn't the person that he'd grown up praising, that he bought them and wanted to hide them so they didn't bring shame to any other person who believed.
Yeah.
But obviously, he's now learning that they are fake. At the same time, Scully's doing an autopsy on Hoffman, and again, really strange. She has hallucinations of Hoffman standing up and taunting her almost about and then she stabs herself with a scalpel, and then he's back on the table. Doesn't ever really get brought up as to what this is.
No, and I mean, this bit, going through the entire back catalogue of Tim Burton here, he reminded me of Beetlejuice in this.
Yes,
the way he's just like dead and just like acting like zany, you know what I mean? Like, I was like,
very nonplussed.
Yeah.
But they both decide to go and it's time. They've got enough evidence to arrest O'Fallon. He's got the motive now. So they go to church. Scully has another vision of Hoffman who's on the cross. So there's obviously this sort of idea of him being Jesus is resonating with her. And then they arrest O'Fallon at the end of his sermon. But then, lo and behold, Hoffman, and it's not an hallucination this time, Hoffman, the real person, walks in, arms raised, like it was like he's a wrestler coming out to intro music.
He goes on later to explain how he's like basically method acting Christ, essentially. And this is his resurrection scene, you know what I mean? And like, so he's fully like leaning into it with the Christ pose, and
so he basically, to cut a long story short, he started the forgeries knowing they were forgeries, but to make sure they were accurate, he started method acting Jesus Christ until the point he believed he was Jesus Christ, and then he wanted to use the bombs to destroy the forgeries because they were blasphemous, even though he made them.
Basically,
that's the long and short of it. Again,
very weird X-file to be based around, I guess.
Well, that is the end of it, because Mulder and Scully can't investigate any further because they get taken off the case for not only going up against the church falsely, but also Scully basically not having the right to perform an autopsy on this random body, which
basically
is wild to me that Scully doesn't get any more evidence that it's him on the table than just the phone was ringing with his ID badge. You know what I mean?
That's it. Surely they've had false identification like cases in this, but this one, they're just like, yep, he's fine. He's got his phone.
I believe Skinner put it best when he said, if I'm wearing Marilyn Monroe's handbag, does that mean I'm having sex with JFK? Which is a fair point. Like, you need to sort of have a little bit more of a... But then again, I don't know, maybe there wasn't, and at the end of the day, what are they going to do? Leave the body down there?
Yeah. They it's a rare case where, you know, the Skin Man actually really lays into him. Like, you know, it's always there's always times where he's laying into him because of, you know, some reason, like they're going against the Bureau for the right reasons. In this case, they just messed up.
Well, he has that job as well, doesn't he? It's a specific kind of job where he's not only interested in like solving cases and like the law of it all, he's got the Bureau's interests in mind as well, and that might be sort of like from lawsuits and whatnot. And certainly I'd imagine the church is a pretty big organization to go against. So as soon as you start making mistakes in that case, that's when it's sort of alarm bells start ringing, I think.
Mm-hmm. That's when people start losing their job. Yeah,
exactly. So that kind of brings to an end this sort of half an X-Files episode. It's like 2/3 of the episode almost. What did you think of it up to this point? Because this, I kind of feel like the last third made this episode for me.
Essentially,
This sort of did feel like, with all the hallucinations and like like obviously the dancing bones and stuff like that, and the kind of half-arsed explanation for things, like this on its own doesn't really work for me.
No, and it has a really like get out to jail like free ending as well. You're reading like where it's just like, oh, they both killed themselves and that's the end of that. So we don't have to worry about
which we find out later. Yeah.
Which this first 2/3 or half 2/3, whatever, however long it is, made it kind of put a stain on this episode. Like David Duchovny's last episode that he wrote, I gave a 10 because I absolutely loved it. It had heart, everything was tied together. This, it had all of the hallmarks of David Duchovny's like last episode that he wrote, and was fun, and had these like inside references to stuff, and just felt like it had all of that, but it also had this weird story just tacked onto it to kind of fill the time, and I feel like that definitely drags this episode down more than it should, really.
Yeah, I think the thing is, I think with this episode, and as we'll get into in like the final third of this episode, I really like the idea that Duchovny had, which is this meta episode. This episode is about the X-Files, the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know what I mean? And like the movies are sort of an analogy for the TV show, and everyone, so they can almost be viewers to the show itself and comment on it as the characters, which is really clever. I understand his plight though in this, because you can't do that without a case.
Yeah,
and it's very difficult to write a good X-Files case and a good X-Files story that's 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
So I do understand where the problems come in with this.
Yeah. The only counter to that, I'd say, is he's done it before and done it well. You know what I mean? So it's not like this is his... If it was the other way around, I'd say, it's a good first attempt. But because he has done it really well in the first one, this kind of feels like a letdown as such. That feels harsh, because ultimately I like the episode. Spoilers for the Critic X-Files. But it does feel like not as good as it could have been.
Okay, so I'm gonna propose something to you at the moment, and see what you think to this. I think this would have worked better if Duchovny knew about this with enough notice, and you have an episode with a case earlier on in the series, and then this episode, and you sort of mentioned during that episode that like it got notoriety, or there was someone there that sort of was aware of what was going on, and then later on in the season you have this episode where the case doesn't need to be explained. It's just, remember that when that guy knew about that case, he's now making a film about it.
That's exactly what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Because the synopsis says, I can't remember exactly what it says, but it basically says an X-Files case gets notoriety and they make a program about it or a film about it.
So you thought it was going to be a previous case?
I thought it was going to be like, I don't know, Fluke Man, or, like a famous... Like, if they took a famous X-Files episode and, like, goofed it up, I'd be like, okay, that's fair enough. Like, that's, it's a famous episode. It's kind of like when... I can't think of an analogy now. I was going to say like the Trios of Horror episodes from Simpsons, but they're not really their own creations. But that kind of vibe, where they take a famous story. In this case, it'd be a famous,
and you can have fun with revisiting it as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The only trouble is with that, I suppose, is it needs to be kind of tongue in cheek and kind of light-hearted. Like, you couldn't do it with Tombs, I guess, because
it ruins what Tombs was.
Yeah, exactly.
I get
yeah, like, he's this sinister, scary thing, and like
couldn't have Richard
like
Gere playing Tombs, could you?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it kind of goes back and sort of ruins that one. And also, Scully was legitimately like freaked out by all those. So I don't know if like putting her back into the seat of that is worthwhile. But yeah, that's what I thought it'd be, and I wish they'd have done that. But yeah, I think they made the best of what they had with it.
Yeah. And I think we're both in the same boat of still enjoying this episode.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Let's get into this last third.
Yeah.
Mulder and Scully both are suspended now, and there's a lot of nice little moments. I haven't wrote down verbatim what they say, but there's a lot from this last third. There's a lot of lovely little moments between Mulder and Scully where it's very candid, and I noticed the dialogue was a lot more just kind of relaxed with each other.
Yeah,
and it was nice to see, especially Scully. I found Scully to be a lot more like almost giggly and like just like it was like the beginning of a relationship sometimes.
But we very rarely see Scully off the case. When you think of it, like this is the first time we've seen her like out of the X-Files role since when they got shut down. Where was it, like last series or the season before?
Yeah.
So it's very rare that we don't see her actually on the job, which she's quite serious. Obviously, she has her fun side and stuff, but she's quite serious on the job. This is her having a 4-week break, essentially, or what she thinks is going to be a 4-week break. She's like, well, yeah, she can let her hair down a bit.
And, well, that's exactly what they decided to do. They decided to go to LA because Mulder had a phone call from Fetterman saying, well, we've already cast you. We've cast, obviously, this is where he asks for Richard Gere himself to play himself. He doesn't get that Richard Gere role. He gets Gary Shandling. But they said, come down, have a look. The actors would love to meet you. And so he suggested, Scully, why not go to LA for 4 weeks and just, we've had a personal invite, let's do this.
Yeah.
Which she agrees to. And it's like, there you go, let's go and have some sun.
I put Cobo wanting to go to LA. What a surprise!
How original, yeah. And this is how meta this episode is.
yeah. I mean, that might even be some kind of like jabbing at himself. You know what I mean? Like taking them out there.
It wouldn't surprise me because the last bit of this episode, you can pretty much take anything from it, and it's got some real life sort of counterpart to it.
Yeah, definitely. Also, you learn a little bit about Mulder in this. He's apparently watched Plan 9 from outer space. What did they say, about 67 times?
I think it was 42 times.
42 times, yeah. That's a lot of times to watch a very bad film.
Yeah, as he's like reciting it word for word.
Yeah.
So yeah, they go to they go to LA. They meet the actors. Scully, so straight away, Tia Leone asks Scully to show her how she runs in the heels. Again, which is great because this is exactly what I was saying. This is where it becomes so meta, where it's like things that we've said on this podcast, and it's like it's just little notes that like, oh, funny little remarks, whatever. Well, actually, the actors are asking them like this now. Do you know what I mean? And like how to do it. Yeah. And what made me laugh was, I don't know why this made me laugh.
Yeah.
What are you on about, like the running?
The run. So I have no idea what they were talking about in the foreground. I was just watching Scully run up and down.
Great. It was so good. And watching them like run in heels.
Yeah.
All the while, Mulder is talking to Gary Shandling about which way he dresses, to the left or to the right.
Yeah.
This conversation went on way too long.
I mean, literally, that's there so they can frame them in the background, surely. Yeah. Because they were talking, I had paid no attention to what they were saying. It was just hilarious, just see, because she just did lemps, like, just straight up and down.
Literally showing how to do it.
I like when they first introduced Tia Leone as well to Mulder. I can't remember what they said now. It's later on where they were like, "Oh, I think Tia Leone has the hots for you" and stuff like that. And it's like it's so like tongue in cheek with those lines.
One of the greatest scenes follows this. Obviously, they are a little bit wary about how the film's going to be, but they don't get to see it being filmed. Mulder calls Scully up from his computer, he says, as he's in the bubble bath. And no, sorry, Scully was packing. Mulder was at his computer.
I thought they were. So that's his computer. I thought it was the bath scene. Sorry,
That's what they say.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I even got lost in that. I just wrote down. I was like, because the first person you see is Scully in the bath, and I was like, I think Chex might be right about these. Like, they're like leaning into too many like Scully half naked shots. Like, at the moment. But we get the immediate balance on this. Like, so
it actually goes the other way.
Exactly.
Eventually.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're both in the bubble bath. They're both loving life in LA. Talking about what they're going to do. They're going to see the premiere and stuff like that. And the great. I mean,
it's the best.
I've never laughed out loud at X-Files as much as this one bit.
It's such a great visual joke. Like,
yeah,
they're hard to do, and this one nailed it. I did the same.
They said Skinner, the Skin Man, calls Mulder, and he's in the apartment below him, and the filter comes up of him also in a bubble bath talking to Mulder
from below.
And I loved it. It just made me laugh. The bit where Mulder asks him where he is, and he's like, I'm in a bubble bath. Like, he just like fully owns it. He's not messing about. He doesn't need it. He doesn't need to make any excuses. And then Mulder does the classic thing of like trying to flip between Scully and Skinner, but not switching the phone.
Yeah, tries to slag off Skinner to Scully, and then does it to his face.
Really good. I really like this whole scene. And again, this is where it doesn't feel like an episode. This isn't an X-Files episode. It doesn't feel like an X-Files episode. It just feels so apart from anything we've seen before. Like, even these cuts and transitions, it doesn't really have that same vibe.
That's the thing. Yeah, there's a lot with this episode where it feels like a commentary on Hollywood bolted onto an X-Files episode. And again, that's not a bad thing at all. It's just jarring from what we've seen before. But then again, we've seen a lot of experimental episodes, and if they were like, this is the last series, they're like, well, we've got to cram these in now because we don't know if we're going to have chance to do them. So it makes sense that you get these experimental episodes in this series.
Oh, for sure, especially when it's like Duchovny and Anderson writing. I feel like if anyone deserves the creative freedom, it's them.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially because they've been doing this for 7 years. Like, if anyone knows the characters, it's them. The big night comes, the premiere, and we've already seen some of this, so we cut to sort of halfway through the screening, and Mulder and Scully are in shock. We cut to that same part in the film where they're in the coffin, and the actors portraying them are in the coffin, and Scully, they're kissing, they're making out. Scully suddenly stops the kiss, says, I can't do this. And Mulder says, why? Why can't you do this? And she says, well, it's because I'm in love with Walter Skinner.
Which there's a very awkward look back to Skinner at this point.
Mulder literally stands up in the packed theatre and shouts, I can't do this anymore, Scully. And storms out.
I just like the cut as well back to Skinner, who you can see he's on a date. He doesn't need this. Like, he's already
he's had his bubble bath. He's feeling fresh, and he's on a night out, and he does sort of like shrug to Scully, who just kind of shrugs back.
Yeah. I mean, I've never had a film made about my life, but you always hear these stories of like people who have films made about them, and they're like, no, this is like F to the world. They all love it. Like, this is amazing. We get to hear this story. And to everybody, to the person who it's based on, they're like, no, this is bullshit. Like, they completely like skewered. They've ruined like what actually happened, or they've taken stuff out of context. They've made me in a bad light and it's stuff. And it's like, I guess you can't, if somebody else is writing your story, you can't really put your side of it across. I guess it's kind of what they say, and if this writer's got into his head that Skinner's going out with Scully, then there's not a lot you can do to stop that, really. And it must be, obviously
exactly.
it's played for laughs, but it must be fairly upsetting if you're watching everybody else think what your life is, and it's like, no, it's not like this at all.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah.
And there is like this really quite interesting dynamic afterwards as well, because Scully chases Mulder out, and he's worried about his legacy almost, and like how this portrays him. He thinks people are going to think it's stupid that there's a villain in it that's, like you said, cigarette smoking guy or whatever this guy's name is.
CSP.
And it basically, and Scully sort of starts to say, well, it's not about that. It's about like, it's all an illusion. It's all an act. It makes no difference. That's not what a legacy is. A legacy is not about what you're remembered by. But it was, I thought it was quite an interesting look at like the 7 seasons of the X-Files so far, and like maybe a little bit as to what the cast and crew think about how the X-Files is portrayed. Yeah,
definitely. And it's also interesting to see that Mulder's the one who's so obsessed with his legacy. Like Scully's like, who cares about dead people? Like, you know what I mean? Like they're not worried about their legacy. Like, you know what I mean? Like she's quite blasé about this. Like, and it's usually, again, it's usually her that's the more serious of the two. I guess, like when you sort of break it down. But yeah, in this case, like it's Mulder that's more worried about his reputation, which is hilarious when some of the conversations that he has in the X-Files.
Which is a common theme, actually, thinking about it, because they do talk about sort of death, and they have a conversation in the bath, which is like, which we will leads on to the ending scene, which Mulder says that he believes, when you're dead, if you come back to life from the dead, you follow your base instinct of what you miss the most, which is eating, drinking, and then dancing and making love, and that's what he believes would happen, and we just don't get the chance to witness them dancing and making love because they eat people.
And they get shot.
Yeah, exactly. But there is this running theme throughout of death and being remembered and what like it actually means, and that does tie into the Lazarus theme as well. So I'd be interested to watch this episode again and see whether there's any more links, and whether maybe like if you watch it from a certain perspective, it works better. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's definitely themes there that are similar. Like, the Lazarus theme of coming back from the dead and stuff like that. There's definitely themes that are like trying to tie the two together, but it's just, I don't know, it just doesn't seem to fit as well as it thinks it does. Maybe, it feels a bit looser, but yeah.
Well, we end this episode with Mulder and Scully basically outright flirting with each other, as Scully, the Skin Man's having a great time, by the way, because he's got a lovely young lady on his arms. He loves the film. He absolutely adores Richard Gere's portrayal of himself, so much so that he just hands the FBI company card to Scully, even though they're suspended.
Yeah. I was going to say, who's gonna pass these expenses?
But Scully says, well, they're going on a date.
Yeah.
And so they wander off into the distance as the urn that like they had the popcorn in, like these Lazarus bowl recreations, is touched by a tree, and then all of a sudden the dead rise in the set that they just walked out of, and they dance around. And just like sort of dance with the other ghosts in the set, and that's the ending of the episode.
Very, very La La Land at the end there.
Yeah, the whole thing was very strange, but this is the end of the episode. What did you think?
It was a fun episode. It had a lot of laughs in it. Kind of the negatives of what we kind of said, like the story kind of goes nowhere. And they just wanted to get this. Yeah, it felt like they wanted to get this Hollywood story in, and they just found a way to do that. Because of that, I think it does drag the episode down a tiny bit. But this last sort of third of the episode is just so fun, and so like it's the characters it's kind of what everybody's wanted for these characters for ages, is them to just hang out and like just let loose for a bit. You know what I mean? Like we see this like constant like, I mean, with every story, you're always going to have the characters be punished essentially endlessly. That's kind of what drama is. But you get this episode where it's just a reprieve where you get to see them just hang out and just let loose, and it's just fun. It's just a fun episode, and I've not laughed out loud like I have to that cutaway joke.
It was very good.
X-Files joke in such a long time. So I did enjoy it for what it was.
At the risk of sounding like a pretentious arsehole, this episode felt very much like art to me. Do you know what I mean by that? In the sense of like, I feel like they could take more creative risks and gambles, because it kind of felt more like a vision of what Duchovny wanted to show, rather than like a specific structure, like a plot-driven episode.
Yeah.
It was more about the themes and whatnot. And to that, I give it a lot of leeway, to be honest. Yeah. But I do get your point in the sense of like, you know what it is for me? I can cut it down to the hallucinations. Mm-hmm. And for me, that feels cheap to put an hallucination in there. No reason. It just feels like a way to get through to the end. And you know what I mean? And that feels like it's undeserved at that point then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm the same as you. I still really enjoyed the episode. I enjoyed what they tried to do with it. I enjoy them trying to take risks. I'd rather this than just another Monster of the Week episode. I'd much rather them try and take a risk.
100%. Yeah, we've seen episodes this series where it's just a pure Monster of the Week, and it's been like so forgettable that it's
exactly. This isn't forgettable.
Yeah. Oh, definitely not. Yeah. There's stuff from this that like I can imagine are like top scenes in like the X-Files, like the entire run. So and to be honest, sometimes you need a kind of okay episode with an amazing scene in it. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's just that way. So there's a lot to like in this.
Luke's production notes.
After receiving largely positive feedback about his last creation, Season 6 episode, The Unnatural, Duchovny approached executive producer Frank Spotnitz about the possibility of writing another. Spotnitz gave him the go-ahead and soon was given a rough copy of the script. Chris Carter was very happy with the story, calling it a smart, quirky, and intelligent idea. And he later described it as outside the norm, even for the X-Files. So it sounds like Chris Carter is kind of agreeing with what we thought, that this is weird for the X-Files. After Carter approved the script, Duchovny also took an active role in pre-production. So it seems, as we know, he directed it as well. So he was involved in all aspects.
And honestly, if those two episodes are anything to go by, I'd be happy if I don't know whether we do get to see him direct again or write, but I'd be very happy to see him another episode in the next couple of seasons from him.
Did he direct Californication? Was that his like
I've never watched it. I've got no idea.
I never watched it. I remember seeing it like being advertised. It was always on like Channel 5 over here. I remember. But yeah, I've never watched it. I don't really know what it's about. I assume California, but other than that,
yeah, Duchovny writes a show about California. Yeah, big surprise.
maybe you were there recently. Is it all it's cracked up to be?
California.
Oh, taking a risk there. Yes.
Yes, it's great. I'll tell you what, how do I say this? So, first of all, I really enjoyed LA. There's some really fascinating sites, really beautiful city. It's not the glitz and glamour I think you're programmed to expect. But then again, I almost feel like a lot of places you kind of in the back of your mind don't expect that anyway. It's a really strange one. It's definitely like a lot less sort of like the streets aren't lined with gold is basically what I'm trying to say. Do you know what I mean? Like there's bits and parts that like just look spectacular, and then there's a lot of just like city streets and just like normal day-to-day life.
I guess
and I'll tell you one thing that surprised me: can't find a bar anywhere.
What?
Couldn't find bars. Like, honestly, we was on the where was we? We stayed maybe a block away from Sunset Boulevard, right? We went to a comedy gig that night, like a little improv show. And we thought, we'll go to a bar beforehand, we'll have a few drinks. Nothing. We ended up walking way past the comedy gig to a hotel, and like you got to pay hotel prices at that point. Do you know what I mean? Like there's pizza places that sell beer, but we don't want to eat.
It's not.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's not worth it. Yeah. I always think that with big cities, like you always have this like glamorized version of it. Like the first time I went to London, I had it in my head of what London's like, and to be honest, London's quite grimy apart from like the like Covent Garden, and you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
the Monopoly board,
area.
basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But outside of that, London's just another city in the UK. You know what I mean? Like it really does feel like that. So I feel like anytime you go to a capital, you kind of get your expectations meet reality quite quickly.
Yeah, I feel like because of like the films and the TV shows and whatnot, you just expect it to be like this paradise almost. And don't get me wrong, you go to like Sunset Boulevard, or you have a Hollywood sign, you know, the Santa Monica Pier and all that. You get what you expect, and then it's the walk between those places where you're like, oh, it's just a city.
People just live here like normal.
Yeah.
Anyway, there was a considerable. Oh God, I can't even say. There was a considerable amount of stunt work, choreographing, and makeup required during the production of Hollywood AD. 2 stunt doubles were hired for the scene in which Shanlin and Leone rolled down a hill into the coffin, and other stuntmen were cast in non-stunt related jobs, including several who were transformed into zombies, a tedious process that took 5 hours to complete.
Yeah.
Another one of my favourite bits from this that we didn't talk about in this was the zombie getting really annoyed that the turkey on the shoulder was not vegetarian, which a zombie getting annoyed at that is hilarious.
Really weird. And as he ran off, he was like telling it like half the zombies are vegetarian. And like, it's turkey.
Again, I wonder if that's just another little jab at, like, you know what I mean? Like, you see this zombie, this meat eating, like cannibalistic, and in reality, they're all like vegetable eating. I was going to say
vegetable eating. Bunch of herbivores.
I meant to say vegetarians.
Yeah,
my brain translated to vegetable. But yeah, this kind of like everything's like for show. You know what I mean? Like I wonder if it's but yeah, it told him a very succinct joke. The dance sequence at the end of the episode reportedly took 2 complete days to film. The first day was shot during active production, and the second was shot on the weekend. The latter of the 2 made use of chroma keying, and when the 2 scenes were finished, they were composited in post production.
Okay,
that's a lot of time and effort to do a dance scene, which seems just to appear. You know what I mean? Like,
it you didn't need it, but I think again, I kind of liked it. I did like it. You know what I mean? It's hard to explain why you like and dislike this episode. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, that's everything, though. And there's so many things in films which aren't technically necessary, but they add to a scene or they add to the feel of something. So it makes sense. Duchovny cast several of the X-Files technical crew in the episode. Tina M. Amidri, the show's actual craft servicewoman, portrayed Tina, the craft servicewoman in Wayne Federman's film. So the woman who was being yelled at for not having the turkey was the actual technical crew. Bill Rowe, the show's photography director, was cast as a vegetarian zombie. Assistant director Barry K. Thompson was cast as one of the men on the movie set. Paul Rabwin was cast as a producer, and the special effects coordinator Bill Miller was cast as the movie's director. So yeah, they got a bit of a payday there, I suppose.
I was going to say, Mulder's really like handing the checks around. I'm not Mulder, probably should I say.
Yeah, well, the next one definitely it shows. I wonder if he did this as like a way to kind of help people out and kind of rig the system like against Hollywood. Duchovny also cast his brother Daniel as the assistant director. Thanks to their part in the episode, several of Duchovny's family members and friends were able to apply for their Screen Actors Guild card, making them eligible for health insurance.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah,
that's one way to get health insurance in America. Just
yeah.
Give him a small role in a TV show.
Well, if you're a director, you could choose whatever roles they have. You know what I mean? Stay at home today.
Yeah, that's an indictment of the American health system, right there. It's like you have to be on a TV show to get health insurance. Anyway, Tia Leone, who portrayed a fictionalized version of herself, portraying Scully in Wayne Federman's film, was married to Duchovny when this episode was filmed. A decision casting director Rick Millican considered clever. Duchovny also cast his friend and fellow actor Gary Shandling as a fictionalized version of himself, portraying Mulder in the movie. Shandling had originally been asked to play Morris Fletcher in the six-season episode Dreamland, but was unavailable at the time. That was one where they switch bodies, isn't it?
Yeah, as I say, big cast for this one.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely. There's some more on that to come as well. The reference to Gary Shandling having a crush on Mulder came from a recurring joke from the TV show The Larry Sanders Show, starring Shandling. In the recurring joke, David Duchovny had a romantic interest in Shandling's character.
Oh, okay, interesting.
I mean, I'd want to see those scenes because I've never watched the Larry Sanders Show.
Do you reckon Shandling was an X-Files fan? Because I did notice during the scene, you know, where they're Mulder and Scully facing Mulder and Scully, especially Duchovny and Shandling, I did notice that he had his mannerisms down to a T, the way he held himself, the way he kept on moving his jacket to put his hand on his hip and stuff like that. There was definitely a mirroring system going on. It did feel like it was more of a fan led role. Do you know what I mean?
Either that or Gary Shandling is very good at.
Could be a really good actor. Yeah. He's good at his job, is what you're saying.
I was going to say, well, you know, if your friend was in the X-Files, of course you'd watch it. But then again, I know people who've been in bands and have not gone to see their bands. So, you know what I mean? So maybe it doesn't work that way. So, the joke about Mulder wanting Richard Gere to be in the Lazarus Bowl stemmed from the fact that Duchovny's acting was often compared to Gere's. Duchovny explained, "We used to always have the joke on set that when they were going to do the movie, it's going to be Richard Gere and Jodie Foster playing Mulder and Scully." So he originally wrote the teaser for Richard Gere and Jodie Foster, and just started thinking about it. And you know, it's so much funnier with Gary and Tia. So there you go. It would have been interesting if they'd have managed to get Richard Gere. Hell of a scalp. The scene featuring the movie premiere featured several uncredited celebrity cameos. One which you got was Minnie Driver. We also got David Alan Grier. The name sounds familiar, but I don't know the what he's been in.
I can't say I even recognise the name, to be honest.
And we have the head honcho himself, Chris Carter, was sat in the audience.
Was he? And you know what? I'm going to have a look at it now because not sure what I know what he looks like.
I know he's got white hair, at least in the picture that I've seen. I've seen one picture. He's smiling. He's got white hair.
Oh, yeah. I've seen him before. Yeah. I didn't see him in the audience, though.
No, I didn't catch him either. I didn't even catch Minnie Driver, to be honest. But I don't really know what she looks like. So
Yeah.
But and finally, this is not really about the X-Files, but on the Killer Cable Snaps episode of the popular science television show Mythbusters, which aired on October the 11th, 2006, the possibility that audio could be transcribed onto pottery was tested. Clips from Hollywood AD were shown during the segment. The myth was busted. So this is bullshit. Take it back.
It stinks.
Welcome to the Critic Files.
I'm going to go for... Oh, this is a tough one. I'm going to go for an 8.5.
8.5.
I'm going to ask you a favour. I'm going to ask you not to ask me why. I genuinely don't. I couldn't give you an answer, is the thing. Yeah. I've gone more for feeling on this one than actual reasoning.
It's definitely one of those that, like I said, it's the characters, you've been with them for so long now that like having them have a time where they've just let their hair down, it is just enjoyable to watch, especially when it's against type from what they're always like. It's kind of like, do you know Comic Relief, when they do the Comic Relief specials and it's just the characters like doing stupid stuff for Comic Relief?
Yeah.
And it's sometimes out of Doctor Who will be doing something for, obviously that's not up to the same level, but it's kind of that like they're doing something a bit outside of the norm for it, and if you're a big fan of it, then
you get something from it.
Yeah, exactly. Somewhat similar, I gave it an 8. Again, I really enjoyed it, not enough where it deserved more than an 8 for me, just because of I do think that the Lazarus story let it down, really. But I mean, yeah, again, not a huge problem.
What did the world think?
Say that again. Sorry, there was somebody at the door.
What did the world think?
Do you know what? Surprisingly low.
Okay. I expected this to be a home run.
So did
Interesting.
So did I. From 3,204 people, it got a 7.3, which is fairly low for an X-Files episode.
Yeah, okay. Maybe that, again, like you said, the little points that we pointed out just proved a bit too much of a stumbling block for some people.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know, yeah. Because I don't think I've seen anything. I think this series, what was that episode that we said wasn't that great recently? There was one.
All Things, was it?
Was it All Things, was it? That got a 7.1. So yeah, they're not too high on the ones from this. So yeah, I don't know.
Interesting.
Do we have any tweets this week?
Welcome to Dan's Twitter Corner.
Yes, we do have a few tweets this week, mostly about our episode on All Things, which I was quite interested to read, seeing like different opinions. To be honest, it seems fair. There's a lot of people that felt the same way as us, where it didn't quite fit with them. We did have a couple of corrections from Kathy. She put, I'm only 2 minutes in, and maybe you corrected yourselves later, but I have to pause to say that David Duchovny wrote and directed The Unnatural. I do remember saying that we didn't think he did, so I don't think we did correct ourselves, because I don't remember correcting myself.
Probably not, no. we just freewheel and just whatever comes out.
Exactly, so good to know that one. So this is the second written and directed by Duchovny. Mm-hmm. Kathy continued, I mostly agree with you about All Things. I rated a 6.5. Scully's relationship with Daniel wasn't completely out of the blue, though. In Lazarus, we learned Scully dated Willis, her Quantico instructor, and in Never Again, Scully talks about her attraction to authority figures. So there was a few breadcrumbs along the way that maybe would have led us to sort of not be as surprised by it.
Mm-hmm. I reckon it's one of those where if you've watched the series enough, you can kind of pick those up. But I think first viewing, that
definitely
stuff
I wouldn't have picked that up. Yeah, I think on a rewatch, I think that those sort of things stand out to you a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But again, it would be interesting to rewatch and sort of see what we do take from it, because I wouldn't have remembered that myself.
No, definitely not.
We have Ray got in touch, said not a big fan of All Things. Sorry, just not into that kind of style, method of filming. The only thing I am interested in is the canon finally that Mulder and Scully were lovers. I rated this a 5. So 5 out of 10, which isn't far from what we went with.
Yeah.
I did see that you got very lucky. I believe Jen Shep got in touch with the hat that you so desperately want.
It exists.
It exists. The Stonehenge Rocks hat. I did see that. I did chuckle.
Yeah, I put it straight on my Christmas list. Don't worry. That's my first thing that I want.
Hopefully, if you've been a good boy, Santa will bring that down your chimney. Finally, Megan Orsi got in touch. Just listen to your All Things podcast. I have to admit, I've always loved this episode. It's never bothered me that it doesn't feel like a typical X-Files episode. I've always looked at it like a poem amongst essays. I don't think it's the best poem, but I like the underlying theme of fate versus choice. I never really liked the Daniel storyline, but was willing to glaze over it because of how it almost forced her to realise how much she's changed as a person since. I also think the woman in the hat was meant to be symbolic. She helped her come to several realisations in the episode. Firstly, that she was moving too quickly, not stopping to take stock in life's coincidences, which was also referenced in the opening monologue.
Mhm.
I mean, I do. There is definitely parts of that where we sat there, didn't we, and tried to look for meanings, and
Yeah.
I think if that clicks with you straight off the bat, instantly it's a more enjoyable episode because you can look at it through a certain prism, or through a certain light. Do you know what I mean?
I think first impressions on an episode matter as well. Like if you click with it at the beginning, like you're not trying to like win yourself over on it. You know what I mean? Like later on, there's some episodes. Sorry, that was my cat just breaking into there. There's some episodes where but like with there was an episode this series where it clicked. Well, I mean, first person shooter. It clicked with me and didn't click with you. And that first impression, like, it leads you down to like what you're going to think for it. So I think All Things kind of has that kind of feel to it. Is you're either going to really like it or you're going to struggle with it because of the way it's told.
I do love that for X-Files as well, where there is, to this day, there's still back and forth as to like what makes a good episode, which episode should be in the top echelon, which definitely do not deserve to be. And there's so much back and forth in the community as to like what they consider to be the top episodes of X-Files.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. I think it should be like that. The discourse should carry on. In fact, when we're over and we've watched every episode, I'm looking forward to maybe we've had a few debating episodes of the podcast where we sort of like talk each other in and out of top echelon episodes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you could definitely do that with this because there's such a variety, and the format of the show lends itself to that. There's such a variety of different styles and types of episodes. There's something in there for everybody, which is again great.
I think all you have to look at is our top episodes. Whenever we do those now, initially, obviously, we had a fairly small pool to choose from. I'd take a guess now that our top 5s or top 10s just would not look the same, at all. Like they might not even have the same episodes in there. So, there's a lot to choose from, and there's a lot to like about the X-Files just in general. So
I am looking forward to our postseason content this season to have a look at how much that's changed. But thank you so much for everyone for getting in touch. If you do want to get in touch with the show, let us know what you thought about this episode or previous episodes. Or we are getting to the end of the season, so maybe throw in a few season reviews if you are interested. Just find us on Twitter @MostUnwantedPod and join in with the community on there. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. Do you have an idea of what the episode is next week that we're going to be looking at?
Yeah, next week it is Fight Club. Not the film.
Do you think it's the episode to do with the film?
Well, I mean, it has to know that exists. Surely.
When did Fight Club come out? That was 1999. Yeah, so definitely, it's definitely we've gone around the same time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I really like the film Fight Club, so we'll like the episode Fight Club.
I'm sure we're gonna love it.
Yeah. We'll see.
Tune in next week for our rave reviews of Fight Club. You watch it be terrible now.
Well, yeah, we'll see.
We will be back next week with Fight Club. Until then, bye.
I didn't say bye. I just disappear.